Welcome to Together Unprocessed, where five friends from across the world share real conversations about food, healing, and life. Let's get started.
Welcome to Together Unprocessed, and today we have a topic that everyone has heard of, and that is stress. And so we're going to discuss some things about stress that you may not know, going back into the history and also what does it do to the body? I mean, we all know stress is tough on us, but do we really know what's happening and why that's important? And then ultimately, what can you do about it? So I want to talk to my friends here. Hi, everyone. Let's have you share where you are and your names again. Olivia, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Olivia. I'm in the UK and it's 12:30 in the day.
Go ahead, Kim.
Sorry. Yes, it's 7:25 a.m. and I'm in Ontario, Canada.
Ashley.
I am in Tasmania, Australia, and it is 11:30 in the evening.
I just love that about how we are from all over. And it's interesting. I am in Michigan, so Kim and I are in the same time zone. We are the closest, and we're missing one of our friends today, Hugo. He is off traveling, so he's normally in Estonia. But let's start. I'm going to begin with just a little story about stress. And when I was in graduate school, actually it was before graduate school, I took my first stress and health class. And it wasn't until then that I realized I was so stressed out. We took this little test, and I love these little tests that you can take, kind of rate to yourself. And I found out that my stress scale was through the roof. And I didn't know anything about stress at that point in time. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is probably a big thing. And it was way before I took any really in-depth physiology courses. This was just one of the wellness classes that I had when I was actually studying to be an accountant still. So it was really this whole topic that opened my mind to wellness. And I was very stressed as an accountant, and I saw my colleagues going through some serious things. And in fact, I was working at the time when I was doing accounting work at a large accounting firm, and one of the partners, who was in his early 40s, he was considered like one of the healthiest guys in the group, lean, and he was a runner. I was at work one day, and now often I was out at the clients as an auditor, and there was all kinds of commotion going on. What had happened was he had a heart attack right there in his desk, and they rushed him to the hospital, and they could not save him. And so that, along with then learning about this stress stuff in this stress management course that I was taking, it was called Stress and Health. It really hit me, because that was a tough day. And this man was young, he had a family, and he was considered to be the healthiest guy in the whole partner group, and he was gone. So I think it's a very important topic, and I think it gets pushed under the rug, and it's crazy because it's something that we all can do something about today. We just have to know about it. So let me go right into, I have a little slide presentation that I have been building upon over the years. Many years ago, I taught this to the physical therapy students at the medical college in Toledo, Ohio. And I think that what's really important is the history of stress. So we're going to go into this little presentation, understanding stress and why it's important. And the biggest thing is that we have to become aware of the problem. I tell my patients often, especially I'm talking about posture, you can't fix your posture until you know what your posture is to begin with. So I often will take a picture of someone, or I'll call them out. If they're sitting there, I'll slouch. I'll say, don't move. Now pay attention to how you're sitting. And they're like, oh my goodness, because they didn't know, right? So we have to at first have awareness before we can fix the problem. So that's what we're going to start with here. So let's go into the history of this. A lot of this goes back to Harvard Medical School, and they were actually doing mind-body science way back in the 1800s. So check this out, Oliver Wendell Holmes. And I'm curious, you guys, unmute. Have any of you heard of this name? Does this ring a bell to you at all? The name Oliver Wendell Holmes? No, no, yes, no, nobody. Okay, so for those of you who might, what's interesting about this guy, he was in medicine, but he was also a poet. So there's some things out there, and I think what I had recognized his name initially from that, but he was the guy who realized that we need to wash hands, everybody. You know, there was all this, and we're all pretty familiar with, they didn't used to do that, right? And it was causing a lot of deaths, especially in women who were having babies. It's really kind of a sad story. So he started that, and it directly influenced the patient outcomes way back then. And that was when people started to see that behavior has a connection with our physiology, which sounds kind of silly, doesn't it? Like you would think that would just be common sense, but it really wasn't. So the behavior of hand washing saved lives. So I want to make this connection with you right now. Hand washing is something that we are all very familiar with, and we all do it several times a day, right? Especially as healthcare clinicians, we're doing it like hundreds of times a day often. Imagine if we could start taking attention to our breath. If breath, which I'm going to talk to you about later, is the key to help us begin to manage our stress, it's kind of like the hand washing thing. Well, now we hand wash all the time. So my goal is that people will start to know and understand that awareness to the breath can really help down the road, just like hand washing can. Okay. So that was 1847, so long ago. William James then came around in 1872, beginning the mind body research. And he wrote a book, his Principles of Psychology, in 1890. That helped to form this groundwork for this mind-body science, which proposed that emotions arise from physiological responses to events. So now they're starting to connect the dots here, physiology and emotion, way back then. Then come forward with Hans Selye, who in 1936, he came up with this general adaptation syndrome. And what it is, I'm going to get my little note here because I wanted to share this with you a little more in depth. They called it, they abbreviated GAS for short, GAS, General Adaptation Syndrome. He was an endocrinologist, and he introduced this as a functional model describing how the body biologically responds to sustained or repeated stress. So in other words, he's saying, hey, there's something going on here physiologically in a stressful time. And what's happening with it? It's the body's reacting in three phases. It's this, first of all, an alarm reaction, right? Like, well, thinking of alarm, what happens when your alarm goes off in the morning? It's like, you know, or ancient humans, let's say you see that saber-toothed tiger, right? There's that instant thing. Or I often think about, you look at a text message that has something alarming on it. I mean, we've all done this, right? And I remember a couple of really serious ones that happened. That first instantaneous smack, you know, that's that acute response. So the body perceives a stressor and immediately activates the sympathetic nervous system. And we'll talk more about this in a minute. So he's the one who started really breaking this down. Then he goes into this adaptation stage. So where the body's beginning to build up resistance. Okay. It's like now we're shifting into this phase of adaptation to maintain balance. That's the resistance. And then exhaustion happens when we've been doing this so long that we can't maintain. That's the exhaustion phase. So it's a 3-stage response to the stress. Then comes forward Walter Cannon, also an MD, in 1901 to 1942, this idea of homeostasis. And I feel like most people have probably heard this word. It's about the body maintaining a state that is needs to be this neutral state. So for example, we need to keep blood sugar at a certain level. If it goes too high or too low, we have trouble. If our pH is too high or too low, we have trouble, that kind of thing, right? He also coined the fight or flight response, or he started to educate on this as an important aspect of just how we function, and how stress and the sympathetic nervous system creates an environment in the body to adapt, right? So we've all heard this fight, flight. Well, there's also fight, flight. There's also freeze, which is what you can see animals do this in the wild. We will also do it. And then there's thawing. And so this gets into a whole nother area. And with my specialty work of myofascial release and body work and all of that, all of this is held within the body. So it's kind of neat for me to see way back in early 1900s, they're talking about this, right? He wrote this incredible book, The Wisdom of the Body, in 1932. That's a long time ago, you know? So then go forward. So there's quite a bit of a jump here, but Herbert Benson was a doctor also at Harvard Medical School, who coined the term relaxation response. He started really studying this stuff and seeing what was going on in the body. So the stress response, this fight or flight response, the sympathetic nervous system, what's going on, and then what's happening in this relaxation response. So as we break this down, we can start to then learn our awareness is improving, like, okay, what's the problem? What can we do about it? What's really happening in the body, and why does it matter, right? So why do we care about it now? So putting this all together, we've got this mind-body medicine idea now that has been developing over the years. So remember, mid 1800s into the early 1900s, and they're really breaking ground here. So these medical breakthroughs that stand on the work of Holmes, James, Cannon, and Benson, and also Selye, I'd like to think of them as mind-body miracles from Harvard. And it's interesting that we don't hear a lot about this in the medical schools. They're not taught to teach this to patients, right? It's not the first line of defense, even though it's so easy to do. However, the research has been going on. So we've got relaxation response, we've got the placebo effect. That's also something that has been studied for decades and decades and decades. And so it was kind of hushed for a while. When you look into the history of the placebo effect, it was around the early 1900s that they just kind of quit that research. They skipped it for quite a long while, and then it started to come out again decades later in the mid 1900s. So then we've also got the mind-body treatments that have all sort of come from this old mind-body medicine that started way back when, and then going forward into this altered genetic expression. So most people now are familiar with the term epigenetics. So, we know that genetics play a role. That's what we've been taught so much over the years. Well, fast forward, Bruce Lipton, who is the one who discovered stem cells, he then later said, hey, these stem cells do something different depending on the environment in which they're in. So turns out, so does the rest of our body, right? And so does our genetic code and our DNA. Like, we can turn things on and we can turn things off based on our environment. So again, that goes back to the mind body, because we can change our environment and our body by understanding about stress and how we can manage all of that. So here's the stress response. I just want to ask you guys, does anybody want to pipe in? I'm curious if you, I'm going to stop the share here for a second. Is this new information for you? Like this, did you know that they were talking about this long ago? Go ahead, Livia. Did you have any?
I had no idea, so it's very interesting to me. I literally never probably even thought about it. So yeah, very good information. Thanks.
Cool. How about you, Kim? You have anything to say?
We were talking just a little bit earlier. So when I went down to Virginia to work with the Navy and stuff like that, we did something very similar. And at that time, I didn't have a clue, not a clue. And even some of the stuff that you're saying today, no. However, you gave us this stress inventory, and I remember doing one very similar back then. And holy cow, I was very similar to you. And I ended up like, my numbers were astronomical. And one of the things that I did at that time, and it was one of those aha moments, and I was able to learn how to take things I can change that were in my control.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
I've heard of it, and I'm learning way more today as well.
Okay, great. Yeah. How about you, Ash?
Yeah, I knew some of it, but more on a basic level. So it's very interesting with you going into a bit more detail because, yeah, working in the wellness area, it is something that has. So I knew about the washing of the hands and all that sort of stuff as well, coming from all that side. So just you putting it in the timeline just reinforces it and just adds a bit more detail.
Great, great. Yeah, I mean, so it was probably almost 25 years ago that I taught this initially to physical therapy students. And so I had to dive into the research, right? It's like, okay, what can I find about stress? And I had no idea that it went back this far, you know? We knew this stuff. They were picking up on it way back then, and it's gotten lost, really. So, yeah, great stuff. So one of the things I did notice way back then, and I tried to find numbers recently again, and it's hard to get things totally in proof. Like, and we always want all this proof all the time, but this is a number that floats around. When I was doing this presentation the first time, I found statements from the National Institute of Health that 85% of all illnesses were related to stress. That was just kind of this general topic that they had. And that was back in 1995, okay? And then a couple years ago, when I was redoing some of them, like, let's see if we can find some newer numbers. And they had actually changed that to 90%. 90% of all illnesses related to stress. So here's the problem in my mind. Okay, we're doing all these things. I mean, I'm always trying to find things for optimal health and wellness. Well, if stress is causing all these problems and we're totally ignoring it, how can we even know that these other tools that we're using, I don't care if it's diet or exercise or whatever, right? You could be doing all these things right, but if you haven't taken care of your stress response and even know what the heck is going on, how can you know? I mean, if these things over here aren't working, then you're like, oh, that doesn't work. But you don't know if that's the reason why that's happening, right? It could be this. And this is that whole mind-body connection. That's why I have a problem with a lot of research, because I don't care if you got 100 participants in that study. Every one of those people are going to have a different stress scale at that moment, what they're going through in their life then. And you could take them through the same procedure 6 months down the road in a different stressful environment within themselves, and you're going to get a different outcome. So it's really hard, right? So, okay, cool. I'm glad this is new information. Let's go back to the share. So here we are with the stress response, and there we go. Now I can see my screen. This is the term from Benson, right? He was one of the Harvard guys. He coined this term as they were finding out what was going on physiologically in the body. It's a natural and adaptive response that the body and mind experience when faced with challenges or demands. So we have to respond to whatever's going on. The body's way of preparing to confront or avoid a threat, often referred to as the fight or flight response. We already mentioned this a little bit. It can be triggered by various situations that the individual perceives as a challenge or a threat to their well-being. Now, I want to expand on this a little bit more, because we often think of stress as always this sort of negative, scary, or bad thing, right? But it doesn't have to be just that. It can also be situations in our life that are exciting or fun or happy, that sort of thing. So we can still trigger this stress response even if it's a positive thing happening in our life. So we all have different stressors, right? There's in all different areas of our lives. Let's think about this for a minute. When we think about stress, I bet if I ask a room of 20 people, when I say what gives you stress, they're all going to have different answers, right? And some of them will be similar, but they can be from all areas of life. So for example, we have environmental stressors, and we know we're living in a world of toxins, right? I mean, I remember years ago, I was thinking, oh, I was, especially as a runner, I would run a lot on the streets, and so you're getting the fumes from vehicles, and when you're in bigger cities, you have all of that. And then we think about pollution. When I was a kid, and in the 70s, there was a lot of talk about, oh, there's this pollution, but we have toxins everywhere now, right? Microplastics are invading our world. It's a ton of stuff going on, so that's a stress. The body's going to respond to that with a stress response. Different life events, of course, when someone dies, for example, that's a horrible stress. There's all kinds of stresses that are negative, but getting married, having a baby, graduating from high school, all of these exciting things are also stressors that the body is still going to go into that stress response. Of course, workplace stressors, people are very familiar with that. For so many people, that's a big one. For a lot, financial stress is the main one. I think that's probably what most people would agree is a huge, heavy burden, especially as things change throughout our lives. And a lot of these things are tied into the financial, right? So it's not always just one thing. Social stressors. When I see this, of course, the word social makes you think of social media, but then, the bullying that happens. I think of kids going through this at a very young age, not just in person, but online. It's crazy. So for example, you're looking at something that maybe you put out there and someone makes a comment to that, and say it's a negative comment, and there's the alarm response. You ever have that happen? You're like, oh, what is this, right? There's that whole adaptation system going on now. And that was from looking at something on a social media feed in your phone. I mean, it's just everywhere that we can have stress, and ultimately the daily grind, right? There's always something that can pop up throughout our day. So it's everywhere. We can't escape it. We're coming up into the holiday season, and I will often do this presentation around holiday time because it's an exciting time. It's fun. There's so much going on, but I don't know one person who doesn't associate the holiday season with stress. Am I right, you guys? Do you feel it?
100%. Yep.
Yeah. Olivia.
Yeah, it almost makes me, yeah, just on that point, it actually makes me dread the holiday season sometimes, just knowing how much there is to take on and responsibilities that come with all the extra tasks of a holiday. So I definitely agree with that. But I was just going to ask you a very quick question on the last slide you had on what
Yeah,
constitutes
let me go
stress.
back.
How would you categorize stress? You don't have to go back.
How would I?
How would you categorize stress that comes from like not sleeping, or stress that comes from someone who has other physiological triggers for stress, like something that's coming from within as opposed to outside? Would you still consider them stress for the purposes of this kind of whole explanation?
Yes. So when I when I go into a couple of more slides here, we're going to talk about what's physiologically going on. But yes, that is also a stressor. So you could put, like, we could put physical stress up here as well. I mean, even exercise, we are stressing our body, right? So there is an adaptation that's going on there. A little exercise, appropriate amount of exercise is good. Too much exercise isn't good. And then how long that goes on, that's where Cellier comes in, and he's like, okay, how much can we really handle before our body really can't take it, right?
Yeah.
Kim.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to, like, with Olivia saying there, I had to sneak away. I was drinking too much, so I had to go to the bathroom. However, what about obesity and stuff like that? Like there was a time, and like, where I was considered obese, and it was such a struggle to do exercise, and you have the physical stress and the emotional stress happening at the same time. What do you guys say about that?
Oh, absolutely. And then, what's happening then is you've got all the physiological problems that come along with those situations anyway. Now, let's add to it what happens in the body because you're stressed about it, right?
Yeah.
It's just huge. So see how, when you think about research, geez, everybody's different and everybody's handling this stuff differently. How can we compare people? It's tough. I agree. Did that help?
Yep.
Anything else, you guys,
Yep.
before we move on?
No, that's great.
Okay. So let's now talk about the stress response. These are the physiological responses that occur. So we talked a little bit about sympathetic nervous system activity already. Think of two parts to the nervous system. We're going to kick in the sympathetic, which is this fight or flight. And then we have the parasympathetic, which is that let's calm down space, right? So it's kind of hard to be in both of them at the same time, especially, as we'll see here in a little bit. So sympathetic nervous system activates, the blood pressure increases. Okay. We have to get ready for the fight or flight. Heart rate increases. We need to get more oxygen to the cells of the body so that they can do their thing. Our increased rate of breathing happens again to support all of these things so that our body can run from that saber-toothed tiger, right? The metabolism changes and it wants to kick into a mode of we need to give energy to the body here. And one of the things that I've noticed with stress is that when I often take my blood sugars throughout the days or weeks, whatever, is I could be having the perfect diet, okay? And my blood sugar is elevated. And I finally realized this is stress. There's no other answer that it has to be this. And it makes complete sense because my body is in this state of like trying to figure out how to run, but wait, we're not really running from anything. And so what do we do? And there's that adaptation again going on. And then also in blood flow to the muscles of the arms and legs, we're literally changing our vascular system. Isn't that, think how important that is. So this is big stuff that's changing. And if we're carrying this stress response every single day, every single day, every single day, no wonder 90% of all illnesses are related to stress. And nobody's talking about it. It makes me crazy. Anyway, I move on. Then the other thing that Benson talked about was the relaxation response. So now we get a decrease. So notice this is just the opposite. We're getting a decrease in the sympathetic nervous system activity. It's slowing down. Our blood pressure is changing. The heart rate is slowing down. The rate of breathing can slow down. The metabolism goes back to a slowing down state of not having to think about we have to run, we have to put out whatever we need here, right? And then there's a decrease in blood flow to the muscles of the arms and legs, which means that maybe we could get more blood flow to the brain, or our organs of the body that really need it. So when you think about the things that happen chronically, like, I think of all kinds of diseases throughout the body, not to even mention cancer, but stresses on the other systems, the endocrine system, the hormones, we know just regulates so much. Well, if we're messing all of this up from being in stress, like this simple stuff, the blood pressure, the heart rate, the flow of blood, it's affecting all of these systems in the body and puts us at risk for not only a poor immune response, but a poor response in all of these other systems of the body. Now I'm going to jump in here for a second and say, because this presentation is not about fascia, but I can't look at anything without using a lens of fascia because it's so important with every single thing and it's completely ignored in medicine. So fascia is this invisible connective tissue system which connects every single cell and is a communication through every cell in the body. It also it's holding our consciousness, our memories. It's very much a part of this whole system of stress in our body, because if we tighten up, we're all familiar with, if you tighten up, think of that alarm response with stress. That tension in our musculoskeletal system is also part of the fascia that is controlling that, because the rest of the body doesn't do anything if the fascia is so restricted and it's not allowing it. Okay. So in this whole thing that we're talking about, we have to, and me in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, there's this whole fascia thing too, which we won't talk about during this presentation, but it's a part of this mind-body connection. So there's so much more that we don't really know. It's kind of mind-blowing if you think about it. So what we're talking about with the relaxation response is that we need to relax on the inside. So we all know what it feels like. Okay, at the end of the week, you can kind of chill out. We're going to put the rest of the world behind us. We're going to sit down, have time with family, maybe watch a movie, whatever it is you do for relaxation. I like to think of sitting out by my pond. Maybe I'm going to have a fire and have a nice something to drink and enjoy the sunset, whatever. There's relax, and then there's inner relaxation. You can literally think that you're relaxing, doing this position of chilling out or what have you, but inside your body, you're still wired into this sympathetic system being in this stress response. So what we need to learn to do is to relax on the inside. So, even after years and years of being aware of this and teaching it and practicing it, I still will need to, especially at night when I go inside, and throughout the day I often do this, but you can't let go because you're doing things, right? So when I lay down at night and I'm feeling my breath, I'm noticing where it's coming from, I'm letting my body relax and settle in. Even after that first state of doing that, I have to go deeper. I'm like, whoa, I'm still deep inside, can feel that tension. And that's a skill that you can learn, but you're not going to do it if you have, first of all, have no idea that it's there. It's like the posture thing. These kids, especially teenagers, especially, like they're sitting at their desks, right? They're not going to fix their posture because they have no idea that it's like that, right? So something that we can do is take this little scale. By the way, hi Hugo. And we're going to talk about this Holmes Rahe Life Stress Inventory, and it's a questionnaire that has it's measuring. Let me pull out my little thing here. It's work from Holmes and Rahe that was taken off of the Hans Selye, the gas system, the adaptation response, right? So what they did is they came up with this scale. It's also known as the social readjustment rating scale. Okay, all these fancy names here. But in 1967, they came up with this, and they wanted to quantify the relationship between life events and physical health. So they're taking this another step further. Yay, thankfully. So remember how many years it was? It was like in the 30s they were talking about this. Now here we are almost to 1970, 1967. Now we're finally coming out with some more information about that. So we're quite a few decades there at the beginning of the 1900s that I believe this was kind of hushed up, right? They didn't put direction here. There was direction going more towards pharmaceuticals, and they had kind of walked away from this, everything from the placebo effect and kind of learning about stress. So these guys come along and they say, hey, there's a connection here. Let's see what we can find out about what's happening in the body, but what's going on in your life, and how do these life events, are these possibly causing this stress response, and then ultimately these physiological responses, which I think is great. And I love these little tests because they help us see where we are. And it takes 43 major life events, and it says, hey, if you've had these within the last year, you're probably at risk. And then we know that this level of stress can cause illness. So here's a prediction of stress-related illness or health changes over the next 2 years. So in other words, take this little test. It's going to cue you in as to whether you might be in a stress response in situation, and be careful because you could be at risk for some serious illness. So what can you do then? You can take the next step, which was Herbert Benson, where they talked about meditation and all of this, which I'm going to go into in a little bit. But how do you even know that you need to do it? So let's I'm going to go off of here. Chronic stress is a major contributor to illness, right? So we're going to try to find out about chronic stress. I'm going to come back to this. So who did this the stress inventory? Anybody want to share? Kim, I know you did it. So I'll just
I did
share a
it.
little bit about, yeah, okay, well, we'll hear yours in a minute. When I first did this, you guys, my scale was 800, okay? And the little testing at the bottom says the score is 150 or less. There's low risk of stress-related illness, okay? 150 to 299, there's 50% chance of a health change, so like a moderate risk. Anything over 300 on this test, and you are at a high risk, an 80% chance of major health issues within 2 years, based on their research. So when I first did this, it was 800. Isn't that crazy? So that's why this stuff was like, whoa. I loved this test because it made me realize I should do something about this. I should take that extra course that I had in stress management that was an option, and what can I do about it? So thankfully mine is now in the moderate category, so I'm happy about that. But Kim, what'd you do?
Yeah, I did take one. I don't know if it was associated with Myers and Briggs or what it was, but and the course, the quality management course that I rewrote, this was all part of it. And my score was 88.
Yay!
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's taken many, 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 many years to get me to this number. Many. I was probably, I don't even know what it was beginning. I was out the door. Yeah.
Well, it depends on what's going on in your life, right? So the thing that I like about this, some of the stuff that's on here, death of a spouse is the first one. That's the highest. That you get 100 right there if you're going through that. Then there's divorce, which is next, marital separation, imprisonment, death of a close family member. So these kinds of things, retirement, even marriage is on here, right? So there's that positive stress thing. Gaining a new family member, change in financial state. And I like how it says it, change in financial state, because it doesn't say up or down, right? Any change, whether you got a new job and you doubled your income, or you lost your job and now you don't have any of this, same kind of thing. Major mortgage, just to give people an idea here. Even if your spouse begins or stops work, that gives numbers on your, vacation is even on here. It's not much, but it's here. Christmas or holiday. All of these things kind of add up. Did anybody else get a chance to do it yet? You do it, Ash?
I'm busy doing it now, so I'm just about to add up my total.
Oh, okay.
You want a calculator?
I've just got one.
Just use your fingers.
There are too many numbers. And it's too late.
Oh no. Let's save Ashley.
So here's my thought. I would like to know, I mean, anybody who's going to the doctor, or, especially like at your annual physical, I think this would be a great thing to give all your patients, right? Like, hey, let's see what your scale is, because if you're going through all these things in life, we want to make sure you're healthy. I mean, isn't that what these visits are for? Aren't they supposed to be wellness visits, right? So what can you do? First of all, see if you're at risk because of the stress thing, right? These are things that just we don't have control over. But we do have control over our breath, what we do with our body, what we eat, all that kind of thing. Okay.
So I've just done it and I've got 305.
Uh-oh. You're over 300 or more, high risk. Okay, so you're going to want the practical part.
But it's definitely probably come down. I think if I'd done this a few years ago, it probably would have been like what you said, way higher. So it's probably on the way down, I think.
Yeah, it was, 800 was over the top. I remember that really hit me. And then another time I did it, years later, it was 600. This is the lowest I've been in a long time. So probably ever, actually, in my life.
Oh,
because
my
all these
goodness.
other things were happening all the time. So it's good.
Makes sense, though, because I have always been a stress head. So I have been working for the last few years on decreasing that. So
yeah. The type A workaholic stuff, right? Okay.
I ended up. Did you do it, Olivia? Did you find it?
No, I haven't. I'll have a look for it.
Okay.
Okay.
I was just going to ask you, Cindy, about how I don't know if you know much about how the Aura Ring works, but it gives you a kind of a stress anxiety score. Is that picking up on the right things, do you think? Is that a good marker of our stress levels?
Well, I love that
Something rude.
feature. Yeah, I do look at it here and there. I can't speak intelligently about how they come up with that number. I just sort of trust it because I like everything else about the Oura Ring, so I'm sure they're on top of it. But I think it's valuable, and I think it's a great tool of bringing people back to this awareness of stress. Like this is a great thing to do. It's like, ooh, take it easy, or what can you do? And then also the Oura Ring now is putting guided meditations and kind of helping people get to that space. So yes, I think it's helpful. Kim, did you have something to say, or was there somebody else had their hand up? No.
No,
Okay.
When you're talking about this, just a really quick, so I was going through a severe harassment case and stuff, and I thought I was having a heart attack. I swore that I was just on the edge of having a heart attack. I could hardly breathe. My chest, it was like somebody took a rope and they just kept tightening and tightening, and I couldn't think, I couldn't eat or whatever. And I ended up going to the hospital, and stress, all stress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So what's interesting during this time when I had this 800 level on this scale, and I didn't put these two things together back then because I just didn't, I wasn't thinking of it. But and here I was, this is in my 20s, right? I was fit. I was an aerobic instructor. I was also running. I was doing all this stuff. I ate really great. At the time I was a vegetarian, and I thought I was doing all these things right. Well, what happened was in one of my exercise science labs, we were doing EKGs on each other, and I was throwing PVCs, which is this rate on an EKG is preventricular contraction, meaning my heart was freaking out. It was like doing this weird beats, and the teacher, the instructor said, you should get this checked out because this isn't cool. So I went to the medical center because my health insurance was through the university's medical center, and they're like, yeah, you got stuff going on. So I wore a 24-hour heart rate monitor, right? And they found out that I had a murmur and these PVCs were happening, and then I had to go get an echocardiogram, and they're like, yeah, you've got a little bit of mitral valve prolapse going on here. So, then you have to take prophylactics when you go to the dentist for antibiotics and all this crazy stuff. So years later, probably, I don't know, 10, 15 years later, I just I'm not taking these prophylactics anymore. And then one thing after another happened. I'm like, I should probably get this checked out. The murmur was gone, no more heart murmur, and no mitral valve prolapse. And the doctor couldn't believe it. He's like, this doesn't make sense. Well, this is what always has happened with me, with my medical stuff, is they're just like, well, you don't make sense, and say goodbye. But, that was a good thing, right? So I really believe that was related to stress. Crazy. Okay. Who else? Go ahead and unmute. Anybody else?
Yeah, I quickly glanced at the document. Probably under 30, 150, 120 in that scale.
That's
I'm
good.
sure it can change, but
low risk.
I mean, at some point, these things change, right? I have pets, of course.
Right.
There will be a point where that will come, and I have to endure that. That would be tough. Not worried about my cat that much, but yeah, dog. He's already 13 years old. Yeah, doesn't have many years, maybe 5, hopefully 7, but that's it, I think.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and I honestly think that should be up there with the death of a family member or even a spouse, because for a lot of people, that's just it's a huge thing, and including myself. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's how it will feel like when that will happen. But I'm not thinking about it right now.
Yeah, good. Okay, oops. Shared the wrong screen there. Okay, chronic stress is a major contributor to illness. So that's just bottom line what we're talking about here. So realizing that you're in chronic stress is the first step, right? And I had no idea that I was dealing with stress when my numbers were 600 and 800. So that's where we start. So what I want to do now, or the next step of this, would be just teaching you guys some of the very basic thing that you can do that was started by the Herbert Benson back in the 70s. They started studying stress and what to do about it. So, okay, taking a break here that we would cut out. Do you guys want me to, do we want to wrap this part up and then make this like a 2-part thing, but just keep going right now? What do you think?
I think this is what I was thinking. I wrote it in the comments too. Like, you're at 44 minutes already. And I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, we could probably talk about this for 3 hours. Like, it's so interesting. But you decide, Cindy. Like, I think a second part would be great as a hook as well. So if you can end this on a hook, saying, so how do we whatever, your choice. But I think that would be epic to get people to come back for the second part. What does everybody else think?
Yeah, otherwise it will carry out
I
too
think
long.
that's a good idea. I was wondering
You're going for
whether
an hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Sorry,
What's the
Olivia,
last part
you
of that,
cut out.
Olivia? Yeah, Olivia.
I just had a look at the test quickly, and I think it would be good to just talk through that test, because it's a really easy thing for people to take. And we were all talking about the scores and all of that, but we don't really understand what the test is. So maybe you could just explain that a little bit and we can put that in.
So like to go through all the items or what? I'm not sure.
No, maybe just hold it up and say, look, there's all these different events, and depending on how many of them you had occur in your life over the last year is going to give you a score, and that will give you an idea of, you know, what may be happening in your life.
And that we can link it below as well, so other people can take it.
It's really interesting. People then think, oh, well, I wonder what my score is, and it's going to engage them.
Right.
And I also
Okay.
And
I had
how
a bit of a
fluid
question
it
on
is. Because
can ask
next
that
week
after.
it could be even different, because there could be something else. And it's just a good guide for them as well. Is that what you're saying too, Olivia?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay. I think that's where it ended. So I'll just start again. Here we go. Okay. So I'm just going to wrap up again that since we know that chronic stress is a major deal, and going back to this scale, we're going to link this in the comments below, how you can see this scale, because it's super. I mean, you can do it in a few minutes to answer these quick questions and figure it out. Olivia, did you say you went ahead and did it just now?
Yeah, it just literally took me 30 seconds, because you just scan it and you can see, you just know whether any of those life events happened to you or not in the last year. So you can very quickly work out your score.
Right. And you know what I liked about this too? It's not one of those tests where, have you ever taken them where it makes you think, or it makes you rate your feeling or something like that? I always get confused on those. I'm like, I don't know. I can't rate that from 0 to 5 or whatever. So this is just a very easy, did this happen or did it not? Everything from the death of a spouse to, did you have a major mortgage this year? Did you have a change in schools or residence? Did you gain weight? Did you begin or end school? Did your kid leave the house? Like, I know a lot of people who could put that, like, in the last year, could put that on there 2 or 3 times, and there's so much of a change that can happen with that. It's important to know. And these items on this list are stuff that would just kind of go over someone's head, that you wouldn't even think about it, right? You wouldn't even consider that as something that would give you stress. But it does. And that's what their work was about, is connecting this psychological and sociological piece into the physiological space that has been talked about with these other researchers that started way back in the 1800s. Yeah, Kim.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so one of the things when we when we're talking about struggles on carnivore and stuff like that, you gave this analogy as watching a baseball game, and then all of a sudden you're right there at the baseball game, and then when you back up and you're coming outside of the stadium, you get this bigger view of like what's happening and stuff like that. This is what I think this provides everybody, is it gives them the overview, it brings them out, and then they can look at it, and then once they get it, they can take analysis of it or analyze it and say, oh my gosh, and they could actually see what they can change, and then what's maybe really affecting them that they need to concentrate on more. So that's what I like about it.
Yeah. Olivia.
Yeah, so I had a couple of follow-up questions. So I took the test, and my score was 130, which you said was low, which is good, right? But I don't feel like that's representative of how stressed I am. So I wonder what else could be going. Like, first of all, how do you factor in how people respond to different things? Because it could be just one thing has happened and you respond terribly to it, and that could make it much worse for you than someone who's had 10 things happen to them that they don't respond that badly to. So where does that come in?
Okay.
And how do you measure it more physiologically? What is the right way to actually test in your body? Is there a way to do that to know whether or not you have a chronic stress issue or not? Those are my questions.
Yes. Okay. So let me go back to the first part where your number is in the low risk of stress-related illness, but you don't feel that way. You feel stressed. Am I hearing you right? You feel more stressed than that. If you were to guess, if on the scale, you would probably have guessed that you were at the moderate or high risk, right? Is that right? Am I hearing you? Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the difference. Now let's note, what is this scale for? The reason is it's to determine your risk of illness over the next 2 years based on these things, based on the research that they did and so on. Of course, there's always people that are outliers from that, right? And yes, how we perceive our stress is the ultimate end game, really. So, and I use this example further into the presentation, but I'll use it now. The first time I did a presentation in college and I had to get up in front of the class, I was a wreck for weeks. From the day I got that syllabus, it was my biggest fear was to talk in front of people. And when I got the syllabus and I saw, oh no, at week 8, I have to get up and do this, how-to speech. I mean, I was already stressing about it, and the closer I got, now I love getting up and talking to people, so it's totally different. Think about a kid who's going to school for the first time and they're going to kindergarten. I can remember my first day of kindergarten. I was freaked out, that stress level was huge. I changed, and later on, then that same type of scenario would not create that same level of stress within me. So you're 100% right. Where we are in our perception of these things that are on this list, right, makes all the difference in the world. The problem is no one or not enough people are out there teaching how do you take that perception and make it less within you in a physical level. Does that make sense? Another example of something that we talk a lot about is cold plunge, right? There's a lot of talk about, oh, that creates too much stress for you. We shouldn't be putting our bodies. No, our body is meant to go through stress. It's our perception and what we do with it that matters, because what ultimately happens is physiologically in the body, we know it's affecting all of our systems. So what can we do to learn how to manage that within? And that's the calm technique that I created a number of years ago to help with myofascial self-treatment. And what I use in the cold plunge is I become aware of what's happening, right? I'm tensing myself. I'm resisting the cold. I'm resisting it. What happens if I am now aware, oh, wow, I'm really tensing my whole body. What if I let go of that? I mean, but I'm hurting. I don't want to let go. It's okay. My body's meant for this. I let go, and it's hard. I can do it now, but I couldn't do it when I first started doing cold plunge. So I learned so much about managing my stress response and going into the relaxation response from cold plunge, because it gave me something to challenge, right? So as a kid, It was that first day of school or getting up in front of people. And then the more you do it, and if you're doing the right skills along with that, you can get better at it. Your body learns and it adapts, because our body adapts to whatever we do and whatever we don't do. So the more we practice with a mindset of learning to calm, then we get better at it, right? So now when I go into the cold plunge, at first I'm, tensing. Right as soon as I can, I relax, I let it hurt. And you know what? It's not so bad. If you just let it hurt, it's a different sensation. Now let me breathe. Let me bring on the relaxation response in the cold, which we're going to learn how to do in the next episode of this. But where are we now? And we can't make that change without knowing where we are. So my mentor, John Barnes, has a saying that I just take with me every day: without awareness, there is no choice, right? But with awareness, we have some choice. So Olivia, you based on these things, your stress score isn't that high. Well, you feel stressed. So that's a really good awareness for you. What can you do to not feel stressed? And I guarantee you there are things that you can learn so that the situation that you're in right now does not feel so stressful. But it's a practice. It's not just an event that happens. It comes with awareness and, connecting to ourselves. This is calm, CALM, connecting to ourselves, assessing where we are, listening to our bodies, and then moving into the practice or the position or whatever it is that we need to do to bring on this state of calm or this relaxation response. Does that answer? Like a long-winded response. Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna add to that list of as you say, they probably based it on a curve and how they've, come up with the most common ways that people encounter stress in their lives. But I think in the modern day, like, it's probably even moved on again. Like, there is so much going on in our political macro environment that we are much more tuned into than we ever used to be, or maybe at the level that it seems to be right now. And there's kind of wars going on, and people seeing things that we shouldn't see on the internet with social media, and that is quite traumatizing. And I think, if we talk about what's our body used to dealing with as far as stress, we're probably much more used to jumping in cold water than knowing exactly what's going on across the world and having to deal with, all the issues that people are having, and taking that on and on ourselves as well, because it will still have some effect on us. That for me is probably a worse situation that we found ourselves in as, as humanity, is having that visibility of the whole world and everything going on. So I think there's probably, more modern issues that are also playing a part that maybe we don't even have data on yet.
Absolutely.
But it's really interesting. And Greg, my husband, he has hypertension and he is not good at dealing with stress. So I'm really interested in the next episode that we do about this, is like, what should he do to do that? Because he's changed his diet, he's lost loads of weight, but he still has hypertension. He still has, ones that he will need to medicate for, a level he'll need to medicate for. And I just love to know how we get rid of that. It's definitely the way that he processes things as well. So I think that's something that could really help him as well. So
absolutely. And I have to, yeah, and there are incredible easy tools for this, but I need to mention this. For 30 years of working one-on-one with patients, and actually more than that if I bring into it my wellness aspect. And when I first started doing this stress education and experiencing it for myself, one thing I noticed, I was someone who would watch the news and I would get riled up about it. And one day, and this was, I was early 20s, okay? I had a big mirror in my living room. And so this goes back to the awareness piece. I had a big mirror and I was getting ready in the bathroom and I'm hearing the television and I got so riled up. I went into the living room, nobody was home. And I was yelling at the TV. and I turned and I saw my reflection in the mirror. And I saw myself and there was like this awareness. There's the awareness. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. I was so riled up. That stress response and all of those physiological things that change, they were up there. And I was just learning about this. And I'm like, you know what? That was it. That was the last day that I watched the news. I don't ever turn that stuff on I could be around it, someone else might be doing it or whatever, Kim. And that's a big reason why,
Okay.
because yeah, I can't do it. So now with my patients all the time, first of all, I don't talk about any of that stuff, but people are coming in for treatment. We don't put energy there. I don't put energy there in my life. I find out what I need to know, but I put it in another place because I see people all the time whose bodies are so stiff within, they don't even know that they are, and they're feeding themselves with this information that they know triggers them. Why keep doing it? Okay, you know this is going on. I ask myself, is there anything that I can do about this situation right now? If the answer is no, guess what? I put it in a box and I put it over there, you know? I take it out of my backpack of life that I'm carrying around all the time. It's like I've, backpacked down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and I carried 35 pounds of essentials on my back. That is like carrying around a stuffed sack of rocks in your backpack of 10 pounds that you don't need if you're plugging into all that. There's nothing you can do about it, you know? Give it up. Let it go for right now. Pay attention to yourself. Learn what you can do to lower those numbers if you're in that stress response. Here's something I'm going to be bold and go out on and say is I mean, we're seeing all this stuff about clogged arteries and but the cholesterol doesn't matter, and then they want you to be on statins, all this awful stuff, and then they're saying you shouldn't do this because of that. What if stress is the thing that's clogging people's arteries? Because you've got people with LDL that's high and their arteries are clear. You got people who, I mean, it's all over the place. It's all confusing. They don't know what's happening really. And it's because there's so much going on in the body that we can't possibly know all of it. When you take something like this stress scale, add that to every single person, we are all an individual test tube. How can we take that test tube and apply these things to everybody? Some things can be, but I mean, I'm different in the morning than I am at night, right? 2 weeks from now, your stress thing might be different because you don't know what's going to happen. It's always changing. So even in a longitudinal study where you have a pod of people, right? N equals whatever, 2000. Think of all of the variables that are going on even in that group. I don't know.
And Cindy, I swear, like we talk about this all the time. We're twin souls. I swear.
I know.
And,
I know.
Just you saying that, just to that's what our podcast is all about. Is it's not just about one thing. It's about everything. And stress is a huge part of that. Like I thought I was dying a couple times, and I'm sure Ashley can relate and Olivia can relate, especially now how busy she is and you. And it's like, it's not just one thing. It's the sum of the whole. And physical, mental, spiritual, and of course nutrition. And that's what I'm so passionate about our podcast, and why we came together was we want to bring this, and we want to help people whatever way we can. And great presentation, amazing.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it. I have to throw in there, it's about, we are all individuals. We have different fingerprints. We have different fascial restriction patterns. People are not going to know what that is necessarily, but it all comes back to our consciousness within us, that life force flowing through the meridians of our body, through the microtubules of the fascial system, where we have literally liquid crystal connecting through every cell. We need to look at our cellular health, and we can't just look at it through the lens of cardiovascular health or just nutrition or all of these things. Water, of course, is important. All of these things, it's a big job, right? But we're figuring it out, and we just have to keep trying things and being aware. And that's where my calm technique came in for me. Is one day I'm like, how do I help my patients do what I do? Because I'm doing this stress management thing continually with myself. I'm doing the fascia thing. Like, how do I help people? What is it that I do? And then I realize it starts with connection in my own body. It's like, that's the C for the calm technique. And then I was assessing. I was being aware. I was assessing with awareness. What's going on inside? What am I feeling? Where is that? how would I describe it? Sometimes I can't describe it. Sometimes it's just a sensation that I notice, right? And then that's the left brain side, because I have this huge left brain side that wants to analyze stuff, and it's like can get out of hand. But then I listen to the body. So that's more of the right brain side, not the left brain, but the right brain. So I'm like feeling, not thinking, right? The assessing is thinking. I'm feeling into my body now with listening. What is the deeper aspect of that, And then move for me is sometimes I would be feeling all this stuff going on, and it might mean, okay, Cindy, move off of the couch or move out of doing this work at the computer, which is usually what it is, and get on the floor and do your breathing, do your self-treatment, do your legs up the wall, do the thing that you need. Listen to the body and then give it what it needs. But we're not taught how to listen to our body. We're taught in preschool and kindergarten how to not listen to our body, because we have to sit there and not do what our body's telling us to do. So anyway, you're right. I could go on forever. So we need to wrap this up, but hopefully this has inspired some interest in some things down the road, because I'm going to give you the keys, super easy key to begin this. And it's been a long journey for me. It was, I think, 35 years ago when I took that stress and health course, and I have a lot to share.
I can't wait for part 2. I want it to happen like right now. That's awesome. Really enjoyed this, Cindy.
You've got me.
Awesome.
Thanks, Cindy. That was amazing.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. Good night, everyone.